How's it going, everyone? I'm here today to bring you guys my episode review on the English dub of Dragon Ball Super episode 22. And this episode I really enjoyed. It was much more of a simpler episode, more battle-oriented, not really much going on in terms of content, but what we did get I thought was really enjoyable because we see the return of an old character in a new body. I'm talking about Captain Ginyu. He makes a full return within this episode. It may not be the body that you remember him having, but it is the same voice actor, which is just really nice to see. He ends up switching bodies with Tagoma. It feels very bad for Tagoma because honestly, his whole character is very short-lived. Just from the time that we got introduced to him till now, I feel bad for him, and now he's just stuck in a frog body. So just seeing this character come back, I am very excited, and him going up against all of our Z Warriors, he puts in work and just impresses Frieza with his new return, and you can tell that Frieza is happy to have Ginyu back at his side. So starting off at the very beginning of this episode, before Tagoma was in a frog's body, Tagoma was actually doing some decent damage against our Z Warriors, and you really notice right away that his arrogance is just bleeding through his body. Him training with Frieza for 4 months, Frieza's arrogance definitely rubbed off on Tagoma, and that is seen fully within this episode because he is just so cocky, he's so arrogant, and he just goes in on all these Z Warriors, basically looking at them as if they are nothing compared to him. Even Piccolo, who goes up first against Tagoma, immediately gets his arm ripped off by Tagoma, and I do have to point this out within this episode because it is very blatant, and it really takes you out of the episode. It's when Piccolo's arm does get ripped off, there's no blood whatsoever, and it really reminds me of Dragon Ball Z because whenever Piccolo did have his arm ripped off, there was blood always there. Whether it be colored red or purple, after they changed it when it was revealed he was a Namekian. So noticing the lack of blood within this episode, it really drags you out of the episode, and it's really you just notice it right away. So I just had to point that out within this review, and it's something that Dragon Ball Super I've noticed is just lacking. Whenever Gohan got impaled by that ki blast, there's literally no blood whenever he just basically got blasted through the chest. It's very noticeable, and it's just something I have noticed with Dragon Ball Super. But continuing on with Tagoma, Gohan actually ends up trying to put in some work as well with Tagoma, but ends up, basically doing nothing. And Tagoma is basically looking at all of them and says, you guys cannot do anything to me. And his arrogance is just growing and growing. But it isn't until this very moment where I kind of laughed out loud at this and just getting to see Tagoma being knocked down 2 pegs because Gotenks shows up in Super Saiyan form and basically headbutts him in the nuts. Tagoma gets headbutted in the balls, and it is an hilarious moment. I love the facial expression that he makes as soon as it happens, and seeing Frieza basically telling him to get off the ground, and you just see him basically in the position, just in so much pain. It is a very funny moment, and it's when he's down on the ground. This is the point where the Ginyu frog finally appears and ends up writing the language of change now into the dirt, and as soon as Tagoma reads this, and as soon as I saw him appear, I was like, oh, Tagoma's done for. His body is going to be taken over, and that is what happens within this episode. Tagoma is taken over by Ginyu, and we see the full return of Captain Ginyu. All of those flamboyant poses, whatever it is that drives him to do them, I'm glad just to see him because it just reminds me of the Namek saga, of the Ginyu Force going up against Vegeta, Krillin, and Gohan. It just reminds me of those old days. And another thing about this episode is that it basically gives a history lesson of past events to Dragon Ball Z. There's a lot of flashbacks and a lot of callbacks, especially with Frieza noticing the defused form of Goten and Trunks. As soon as Frieza looks at Goten, realizes that that is Goku's son, and as soon as Frieza looks at Trunks, it takes him a minute, even though he's wrong in what he ends up saying, he ends up looking at Trunks and basically says, that is the son of the person that killed me back in my mecha form when I came to Earth, basically trying to destroy everyone. And Frieza is basically talking about future Trunks, and to his knowledge, he doesn't know that this is actually just a younger version of the same person that ended up killing him. So I do find that very funny, but I also do love the flashbacks to old Dragon Ball Z stuff, whether it be Namek or anything. It's just really cool, and I really like that as well because if someone is watching Dragon Ball Super for the first time and sees those stuff, it might drive them to be hey, I want to go watch that, and it makes them go watch the old Dragon Ball and Dragon Ball Z. Z and just overall gets them interested in the overall world of Dragon Ball. So I really do like that that is what Dragon Ball is doing, just having these key scenes being basically put into like flashback sequences. I think that is really, really cool, and it just gets more and more people to check out the older series because Dragon Ball Z is one of my favorites, especially with Dragon Ball. It's just an overall great story, and the more people you get to go back and look at that content, I say the better. So now with Ginyu back into the fold, he basically goes on to fight the rest of our Z Warriors, and none of them can even put up a fight to the amount of power that Ginyu now possesses being into Goma's body. But while all of this is happening, Bulma comes up with a plan with Goten and Trunks to basically grab the Sunday within Jocko's spaceship and basically try to get Whis to come back down with Beerus, but also Goku and Vegeta, so that way they can try to defeat Frieza, because right now Goku and Vegeta are their best bet in defeating Frieza. But little do they know, Goku and Vegeta are in an alternate dimension continuing their training, and I love actually going back to Beerus' planet, just getting to see Beerus and Whis hanging out. Beerus is just eating pizza, and Whis is just like, oh, I hope their training is going well. And I do like the fact that they kind of show them going through the training and actually slowly getting stronger. Like you see them starting to control their ki, and the alternate dimension that they are in is very similar to the hyperbolic time chamber. So there's a lot of callbacks to, like, if you are a Dragon Ball fan, you're like, oh, I know what that is. And it's like, oh, I know what they're talking about. So the Goku and Vegeta section within this episode is still very, very short, and I'm just still waiting to when they're finally getting out of that alternate dimension, and then Whis ends up taking them to Earth, so that way Goku and Vegeta can end up fighting Frieza, because that is the main event that everyone right now is really looking for. But going back to basically Ginyu and our Z Warriors, Gohan and Ginyu end up having a 1v1 battle, and for the most part during the beginning parts of this battle, Gohan is basically losing. Ginyu has him on the ropes, and it isn't really until Gohan goes Super Saiyan mode that he's able to turn the tables and actually take down Ginyu. And I do really like this one shot within the episode where it kind of mirrors Goku like sparing Frieza's life back in the Namek saga, and we have Gohan basically trying to spare Ginyu's life in the same way. And Frieza does notice this, and as soon as Frieza realizes this, ends up taking out all of his anger out on Gohan, giving him Death Beam for days in through the shoulder, his legs, and basically incapacitates him to the point where he's on the ground and he can't move, and he ends up going all the way back to his normal form. His golden hair is gone, and he's just basically left powerless, and basically Frieza is about to deliver the final blast, and we have Piccolo basically coming in to block it, much like he did back in the Saiyan saga when Nappa was about to kill Gohan. There's a lot of callbacks within this episode that I'm just starting to realize, and it really goes to show that these callbacks are still very effective, and it's like, oh, I remember that. So it's very unclear right now if Piccolo is actually dead within this episode, because it kind of does say that it was a fatal shot that ended up taking out Piccolo. So until the next episode, I don't know if Piccolo is in fact dead, so we're gonna have to find out for the next episode. But that is the cliffhanger that we're basically left with for this episode, and I'm really hoping that next episode we have Goku and Vegeta come back, because right now, basically our Z Warriors are either dead, crippled, or just like can't do anything at all. So that's basically my review for this episode, guys. It was a very simple episode, but I still enjoyed it nonetheless, and I did really enjoy getting to see Captain Ginyu come back into the fold, coming back with Frieza, and just getting to see all those ridiculous poses again. So I want to hear your thoughts on this episode, guys. What do you think of the English dub, and how do you feel about Ginyu making his return in all of its flamboyant glory within this episode? So leave your thoughts down below, guys, and if you guys want to stay up to date with all of my reviews on the English dub of Dragon Ball Super, feel free to subscribe. I would love to talk with you guys and just talk about Dragon Ball content. This is a fun series. It's very nostalgic for me, and I just love meeting other Dragon Ball fans that just love the content as much as I do. So that's going to be the end of this review, guys. Episode 23 will be out next week, but until then, I'll talk with you guys then. Okay, guys, see you later.